Hello and welcome to all the men and women of the West. I'm Joe, here with me is my co-host Dan.
Hello and greetings.
This chapter is of Eldamar. It's the end of the westward march of the elves. You have the elves who arrive onto the Hitherlands over on the western shores. Ulmo speaks to the elves and says, I'm going to have to move an island to get you all over to Valinor, which he then does. He transports first the Vanyar and Noldor. It happens lickety-split. Then Olwe becomes king of the Teleri and takes off to join his fellow kings, only for some of the elves to become the Philothrim, those of Felos, and these elves chose to remain in the havens of Brithombar and Iglarist, and they nominated Círdan the Shipwright as their lord. Not their king, just their lord. So obviously they owe liege homage to someone else. I suspect they would later owe it primarily to Elwë, as he is Lord of Beleriand for a long time. Círdan would also probably grow to be the oldest of all the elves. So old that he actually grew a beard, which should show how much time has passed between this moment and way down the road, down to the Third Age, when he transports many characters across the sea. Now, Elwë and his people call themselves the Egloth, the Forsaken People, and the island of Tol Eressëa was never to be moved again after transporting Olwe and his crew. Tirion is built in the heart of Tuna. The Tower of Ingwe is built, and it's very large. There's a tree in the city of Tirion that is descended from Telperion and is created by Yavanna and is named
Galadhilion.
Finwë, at about this time, we find out, is married to Miriel and has a son called Feanor. We also find out real quick that a few episodes ago I commented on, wouldn't it be interesting for the descendants of all three of the original kings for their line to be reunited, and that it should be Gil-galad? Actually, it is. I made a mistake. I forgot about the detail that Gil-galad is descended from Ingwe, from Finwë, and from Olwe. He is descended from Ingwe via Indis, a second wife of Finwë, and she was daughter to Ingwe. You then have Finwë, who's his Finarfin's dad, and Finarfin's wife was Olwe's daughter, Eärwen. So Tolkien was working with those themes I said are so important. Now, interesting point to note, though, is that something similar kind of happens with Elrond, in that he's descended from Ingwe and from Finwë via, as well as Elwë, because Elwë Singolo is father to Luthien, and she is ancestress to Elrond. So Elrond's also descended from all three houses. With that said, you ended up really spending a lot of time working on the family trees, mostly of the House of Finarfin, with Finrod, Felagund, Orodreth, Angharad, and Agnor.
Yeah, because here it is, I was reading the chapter and I was getting confused because a lot of the names started with similar letters. So it's like, okay.
Such as F.
F. That was...
With the House of Finwë.
So it's like, okay. So, took a piece of paper. All right, so we've got the head of the household. There's his kids.
This is a good time to shout out to people if you're unsure about the lineage of the House of Finwë and Thingol. We have videos for that, so go check it out. I'll probably post it down below. We're also introduced to Eärethel, who enjoys riding and hunting, and she is known as Ar-Faniel, the White Lady of the Noldor, and she enjoys the company of the Feanorians. These are all factors that means nothing could go wrong for her. It's gonna be just peachy. Things are gonna go terrible. It's interesting that she likes to wear silver and white. Now, white is a color of purity, but silver reflects wealth. She's got some expensive tastes. She knows herself to be a princess. She's also one of the snobbier and more entitled characters, as we find out later down the road. And pride always cometh before a fall in Tolkien's stories. And Eärethel has a magnificent fall. Not in terms of fall from grace, but so much as it's like Icarus. She flies so close to the sun, her wings of wax melt and she crashes. This is a trait she actually shares in common with her older brother. That said, it would be Osei who would teach the Teleri to build boats. Or as it's said in How I Met Your Mother, boats, boats, boats! And they would found the city of Alqualonde. And they would be given many jewels, which they would adorn their palaces and mansions with. These jewels were given to them by the Noldor. And generally, Ingwe was held up as High King of the Elves. and abode at the feet of Taniquetil. That said, Ingwe would not have a very strong kingship because Feanor would come along and rebel and suffer no repercussions and then destroy Olwe. We can thus argue it wasn't a very strong kingship. It was incredibly weak. That said, the title of High King of the Elves would be usurped by the line of Finwë, so it's not a title that Ingwe is to hold forever. Finwë ruling from Tirion and all the way from Akolonde. Sadly, now we are introduced for the first time to the swan boats of the Teleri, which are very beautiful, but beautiful things don't always last. And we get these beautiful descriptions of the cities of the Teleri and of the Noldor, but this is just set up for what's to come, because there is a storm coming. Melkor is walking free in the halls of Valinor. We also find out at the end of the chapter, Feanor was prone to traveling all over Valinor alongside his sons, the length and breadth of Aman. So we thus have the image in our minds of Feanor as a wanderer. Obviously, we're supposed to probably think of him as feeling bereft in a way. He has his sons accompanying him everywhere, so obviously he likes to keep them close at hand. But he feels alienated from the house of his father when his father took Indis as a wife. Now, this is going to be coming up in the next chapter, but already you can kind of get that impression. Osei and his people are divided between either side of the Great Sea, whether they should stay in Valinor's shores on Tol Eressëa or over on the western shores in the Hitherlands over in Middle-earth. So you have division that's growing. You have Elwë, who's proclaimed himself king and who's angered at having been forsaken and abandoned when he kind of took too long. I'm just saying. On the other hand, his best friends were Finwë, Ingwe, and this was his younger brother, Olwe. And they all said, well, it's been 5 minutes. Too bad. You would feel a little betrayed. You've got the seeds of the division that's to come. And of course, we get a lot of language lessons here, which that was fun, I will admit. I do like it.
I couldn't help but think of the biblical story, the Tower of Babel. How the various tribes of elves are splintering, the rulers are turning on each other, and they're developing different languages.
Well, they haven't turned on each other. Not yet. These kings never turn on each other. But that doesn't mean their heirs won't. These guys all consider each other essentially sworn brothers, bringing in the Germanic idea of sworn brotherhood or blood oaths of brotherhood. It's also a Norse idea. And Tolkien's obviously basing a lot of the relationships of these kings off that. In a way, their later wars with each other are internecine conflicts. Finwë, for example, is besties with Olwe and Elwë. What about Feanor and Olwe? What does that make them? Absolutely nothing. What does that make Elwë and Feanor and Fingolfin and their children? Absolutely nothing. They are technically adoptive or foster family to each other in a way. And they're going to get into conflict with each other. That can't end well. Now, Ingwe is smart and wise and never forgets his oaths and tends to go, well, guys, we are basically family. Try to get along. On the other hand, you also have, for example, the sons of Finarfin. What do you think of it commenting that Finrod, Orodreth, Angrod, and Agnor felt that they were more brothers of Fingolfin's sons rather than their father's sons? They feel more loyalty to their cousins than their father.
That says a lot about family drama.
I wonder, are they also attached to Fingolfin, their uncle, more than their dad? Now, their dad is actually a really good dad. We find that out over the course of the story. But he kind of takes a fatherly approach of, my kids have to make their own mistakes. Which, that's good, that's fine. Fingolfin takes the attitude, well, if my son's about to go out in the battlefield and die, I have to be the one to die instead of him. I gotta take the fall for him. The sad thing is, Fingolfin kind of gets taken advantage of by some of his kids. And on the other hand, they get used to him cleaning up after them. Turgon, Erethel, and Fingon develop that habit. And that's not good. As for Finarfin's sons, them being closer to their cousins. Now here's the problem. Fingon feels his best friend is Maethros. That's his sworn brother. Finrod, Orodreth, Angrod, and Agnor feel that they should be closer to him than dad. Same with Galadriel to an extent. That's not good, because the sons and daughter of Finarfin are not listening to their wise, not all-knowing, but really smart dad. That's a little sad and a little scary of what's to come. That said, it's also fascinating because Finrod and Orodreth and Angrod and Agnor all have very close brotherly bonds with each other. What's interesting is that the Feanorians and Fingolfinians do not all have the same kind of sibling fraternal love for each other that the children of Finarfin do. Like, Finrod and Orodreth are basically besties. Same with Angrod and Agnor. All four of these brothers are besties. Galadriel does truly love her brothers, although she does have a greedy, ambitious side. When the sons of Fingolfin commit themselves to the Feanorian folly, the sons of Finarfin attach themselves to that cause. And that will have devastating repercussions. That said, I can't help but think that Gil-galad had a lot of his grandpa in him. You're busy thinking, ooh, this is going to cause drama. I'm glad that you took one look at that sentence which says, oh yeah, the sons of Finarfin felt they were closer to the sons of Fingolfin. That's not going to end well. Next time, we're going to continue our reading of the Silmarillion. We're getting to the exciting part of Feanor and the unchaining of Melkor. So if you enjoyed this video, don't forget to smash that like and that subscribe button like your Melkor smashing Finwë to itty bitty pieces for those Silmarils.